I don't know what happened. I was supposed to take her to the Fireflies and walk away.
What do you do?
The Last of Us Part II, released in 2020, was one of the most highly anticipated sequels in gaming, following the beloved 2013 classic from Naughty Dog. At first glance, it seemed to deliver. Critics praised it and review scores were sky high. You'd think it matched or even surpassed the original, but I look a little closer and you see a much more divided reactions from fans and players. The game sparked intense backlash, with streamers and YouTubers voicing strong disappointment.
Storytelling, coding, whatever the fuck you want to call this, man. What? There's a good way to go out and there's a bad way to go out. Dude.
Some even destroying their game discs live on camera. Players' reviews reflected this, with some scores dropping sharply, and for many, The Last of Us Part II became either their all-time favorites or the most disappointing sequel ever. There's almost no middle ground. So, why did this happen? So in this video, I'll show you why both sides of this passionate debate have good reasons for their opinions. To really understand the controversy, let's rewind to the original, The Last of Us Part 1. I assume most of you watching this video have played or experienced the game story, so I won't go over the story again. But what made The Last of Us a classic wasn't just its action or the zombie threat, it was the emotional depth and the powerful relationship between Joel and Ellie. Initially, Joel treats Ellie as just another job, but their journey across America slowly forges a deep, almost father-daughter bond. This hits especially hard because of the game's unforgettable opening where you play as Joel's actual daughter, Sarah, during the outbreak's first chaotic night. In a heartbreaking twist though, Sarah is killed in Joel's arms, setting the emotional tone for the whole experience.
Why'd he shoot us? Ain't no way she died 5 minutes in the game.
Come on, baby, please. I know, baby. I know.
What?
Sarah.
Fast forward to the ending, Joel's get a choice between sacrificing Ellie to save the world or saving Ellie and continuing to put the world at risk. He obviously chose the latter and gunned down every firefly in the building and rescued Ellie. Now to see why the ending hits so hard again, let's look at the themes explored in The Last of Us Part 1. The game explores grief and most of all finding a reason to live. As we play with Joel throughout Part 1, he seems like a very closed-off person, letting very few people into his circle of trust. Now this isn't simply because he's skeptical in a world full of evil, although that's part of it, it's more that he avoids attachment to prevent future pain after the loss of his daughter. This brings us to the concept of survival versus living. Joel, for the longest time, was surviving instead of living. What I mean is, he lives just for the sake of living and doesn't draw any enjoyment out of it. I mean, his daughter died in his arm and he ended up separated from his brother Tommy a few years down the road. Now he's all alone in a world with the infected running around. Society is stuck in small quarantine zones controlled by a corrupt government system. Terrorist attacks happen. It's a terrible place to live in. So quite frankly, why live in such a terrible world when you don't have any real reason to, when survival itself is just pain? In fact, it's heavily implied in the game that Joel tried to kill himself shortly after Sarah's death. Ultimately though, Joel decided to continue living, but still he chooses survival over living as a defense mechanism after Sarah's death. He doesn't want to get emotionally attached because it poses the risk of losing the people he loves. However, as Ellie and Joel continues to bond, the game slowly reintroduces the risk of living through Ellie. A few hours into the game, we meet Henry and Sam, brothers who are also trying to survive in this apocalypse. In another heartbreaking sequence though, Sam gets infected with the cordyceps and Henry had to put his own brother down.
Bro!
He then shortly commits suicide because he wouldn't want to live in a world where survival is constant pain and the only reason you live for is now gone. Henry would have to carry the guilt of killing his own brother for the rest of his life. Henry represents what Joel would become if he let himself care fully for the people he loves. Henry's suicide really showed the cost of attachment though on the other hand, although necessary to continue in such a cruel world. This theme is also explored through Frank and Bill in episode 3 of the TV show. Although it was called Woke by some, this had to be one of my favorite episodes of television ever. When Frank becomes too weak and old to continue, Bill and Frank both take pills and die in each other's arm, an emotional end to the episode. Now obviously this isn't in the game, but it reinforces the same theme, so I'm gonna bring it up anyways. Bill first starts in pure survival mode, and as the outbreak happens, Frank became his reason to live, not just to survive, and in the end, they both chose death in each other's arm. Quite frankly, dying in your lover's arm after 20 years of living together is the best ending anyone could wish for in a world like this. And if Bill didn't die, go back into that survival mode 20 years ago, but now with the added emotional weight of losing the one person you love, which again begs the question, is it better sometimes to just let go? Going back to Joe, he eventually found his reason to live, Tess. However, that relationship didn't last long. Now, Joe could have just given up here, but he didn't, because he made a promise to Tess in her final moments to continue the mission and deliver Ellie to the Fireflies. And as the journey goes on, Joe and Ellie bond, and then Ellie becomes Joe's new reason to live. The argument the game made is that living requires attachment, but it exposes you to the risk of loss and pain, something Joe's known all too well. And the game intentionally leaves the idea of living versus survival ambiguous, allowing the players to interpret themselves. If Joe had given up after Sarah's death, he wouldn't have met Ellie, and he wouldn't have had the chance he never got to raise a daughter into adulthood. At the end of the game, he's faced with another choice: to save the world or save his world, his reason to live. The ending reinforces the fact that Joe rejects the idea that humanity as a whole matters more than the one person he loves, which is opposite from what he had before, where he just lived for the sake of living instead of live for the sake of enjoyment. Here, he doesn't want to choose millions of people he doesn't care for over the one thing that has kept him going up until this point, which is Ellie. The choice ultimately has consequences in the second game, so it's left up to us to decide whether it was the right thing to do or not. The Last of Us never fully condemns or justifies Joel's actions, and it's up to the players to decide why he did it. Or maybe there isn't a right answer at all, because the world isn't black and white, it isn't just right or wrong, and that's what makes the first game so powerful, the themes it explores and the nuance behind it. So this brings us to The Last of Us Part II, which might be the most hated sequel in gaming history.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Let's start with the elephant in the room. The thing that got people so angry that some literally cut their game disc up live on stream: Joel's death. Joel's death was certainly a pivotal moment in the game and probably one of the most shocking character deaths in gaming. No one expected it, and Naughty Dog killed off a protagonist of the franchise, and not just any protagonist, but one of the most beloved characters in gaming very early into the story in a brutal and horrifying way. He didn't get a heroic send-off at the end of the game or some emotional good endings like a lot of protagonists do. It was sudden, brutal, shocking, and very early on, completely shifting the protagonist's role onto Ellie. I literally went through the 5 stages of grief when Joel died, especially denial. I genuinely didn't believe he was dead until they showed his gravestone. And clearly, a lot of people felt the same way. Fans were furious, and honestly for understandable reasons.
Memorize everybody's face. Memorize everybody's face, baby J. Yup, we got Ashton Kutcher, Hayden Penn, and f***ing Snake Cooch. You got Masvidal, we got Oprah Winfrey daughter.
More importantly, Joe's death removed one of the best things that made the first game so special: Joe and Ellie's relationship. The game opens with Joe and Ellie sharing an awkward exchange, almost like the story is hinting at their relationship beginning to fall apart. Then the time skips happen and we see the two completely detached from one another. Through Jesse's conversation with Ellie, it's implied that Ellie was even angry at Joe the night before, despite him simply trying to protect her from the resident bigot.
Let me see if I got this right. You kissed Dina,
She kissed me.
which triggered Seth to call you a not-so-nice word.
Yep.
Then Joel decked him,
More of a push.
and then you got mad at Joel. That part confused me.
Something was obviously wrong between them.
I don't know what's going on with you and Joel.
Maria,
Guy really cares about you. And I'm sure he didn't mean to.
we're fine.
All of this felt like a setup for some kind of emotional resolution. Our favorite duo was going through a rough patch, and it seems like the story is building towards an arc where they'd eventually reconcile. But that never happens. Joe is suddenly beaten to death while Ellie is forced to watch helplessly, but that's how their story ends, just unresolved, bitter, and incomplete. At that point in the game, we didn't even know the full context behind their conflict. There's no closure to their relationship, and honestly, no real closure to Joe's story either. In the first game, Ellie became Joe's reason to live, to keep fighting and stay alive. She gave his life meaning again, but before the two could ever truly mend their relationship, Joe was killed in one of the most brutal scenes in the franchise. And that says a lot considering how much fucked up shit that's happened in this franchise. Joel dies, believing Ellie hates him, still angry over something that we players don't fully understand yet. That's when he made his death hurt even more. It wasn't just the gore or the shock factor, it was the fact that such a beautifully written character and greatest relationship in gaming ended with no real resolution whatsoever. Now let's talk about the next major reason people hated Part 2, Abby.
Right here! One more time, tough! Yeah, baby! Again! Fuck yeah! Fuck yeah! Yeah!
Understandably, the person responsible for Joe's brutal death received an unbelievable amount of hate from players. And honestly, no matter how much the game tries to justify her actions later on, for a lot of people, it was never going to be enough. So the fact that we not only have to play half the game as Abby, but are also forced to fight Ellie from Abby's perspective at a certain point toward the end of the game made things even worse for the players. Then, after spending the entire game chasing revenge, Abby survives in the end, and obviously for a lot of people, that felt deeply unsatisfying. We spend the majority of the game playing as Ellie with one clear objective: revenge. And then, after all of that build-up, we never actually get it. Imagine if John Wick started off as a revenge story where he has to chase down the people who kill his dog. But halfway through the film, it switches perspective to the antagonist, and then all of a sudden, he's given a story, and we're supposed to root for him instead. It would feel incredibly frustrating because the story abandoned the emotional payoff it spent so long building towards. That's the problem many people had with Abby. Naughty Dog introduced her in the worst possible way. The game literally shows Joe saving Abby's life, only for Abby to torture and murder him in front of Ellie. And at that point in the story, we still had no explanation for why she did it. By delaying her motivations until much later, the game basically guarantees that the player would hate her from the start. There was never realistically going to be a moment where the majority of players certainly did a complete 180 and started sympathizing for Abby. In fact, the most common reactions I've seen from people playing through the game is that the longer they were forced to play as Abby, the more they hated her.
What? That's the way the story ends.
It was an incredibly risky narrative decision to introduce characters in such a hateful way and then expect players to empathize with them afterwards. And finally, we get to the game's central theme, revenge. Part 2 constantly tells us that revenge is an endless cycle of violence that only creates more pain. Someone has to break the cycle, and doing that takes immense emotional strength. There's truth to that message, and I don't disagree with it, but in the context of this franchise, the way it's presented feels far more one-dimensional than the themes explored in the first game. The first Last of Us was filled with moral ambiguity and interpretation. It trusted the players to think for themselves. Part 2, on the other hand, often feels much more direct and forceful with its message. It almost feels like the game is trying to push its themes onto the player rather than letting them come to their own conclusion naturally. It's almost like it's saying, you will empathize with Abby by playing as her for half the game, you will have to understand her perspective, and in the end, you will have to spare her. Is driving a narrative down our throat. Instead of allowing the players to fully process the story and decide how they feel about its themes on their own, the game often feels like it's spoon-feeding its message to the audience, and for a lot of players, that made the experience feel more frustrating than thought-provoking. However, it's time to give the game credit where credit is due. Despite its missteps, there are still many things the game does exceptionally well that makes it a masterpiece in its own right. On the surface, the revenge is bad theme may seem one-dimensional or basic, but the journey the game takes you through perfectly demonstrates that message. First of all, it's not easy to forgive or empathize with people you don't agree with. Throughout the game, Ellie goes through an arc where she slowly realizes she's wrong and ultimately becomes the bigger person by ending the cycle of violence. The cycle isn't supposed to be easily broken, but it takes an incredible amount of willpower to walk away. In a way, players struggling to forgive Abby actually strengthens the game's message. It's supposed to be difficult to forgive her, especially after what she did to a character we held so dear, but the truth is, Abby and Ellie aren't that different from each other. They both lost someone deeply important to them for reasons they each see as unjust, and both are willing to go to extreme lengths to avenge the people that they loved. Yet in the end, neither of them truly finds satisfaction. The only real difference is that Abby follows through with her revenge, while Ellie eventually recognizes the damages it causes and chooses to walk away instead. However, despite their different choices, both of them suffer devastating losses, proving that revenge is never the right answer. The game becomes a masterpiece in the sense that you, the player, feels enraged by Joel's death, furious at Abby and dissatisfied with the ending, all emotions that reinforces the very point the game is trying to make. It shows revenge as something so emotionally consuming and destructive and feels very justified in the moment, but it's ultimately harmful. Overcoming those feelings is incredibly difficult, and the game makes you feel that struggle firsthand as a player playing through Ellie's perspective. If the game had started from Abby's perspective and we knew nothing about Joe or Ellie, you likely would have rooted for Abby as well. From her point of view, Joe was the man who killed her father, an unarmed doctor. That's what makes the conflict so complex. Both players have understandable motivations for doing what they did. At the same time, the game ultimately argues that Ellie's decision to forgive Abby and end the cycle is the morally right one. Another thing I want to touch on outside the main theme is the ending scene between Joe and Ellie, which gave us more context for why they were at odds with each other at the start of the game. This was such a beautiful scene and maybe my favorite in the entire franchise. It gave us a true ending to Joe and Ellie's relationship. Although not necessarily a happy one, it was a beautiful and emotionally heavy conclusion. It certainly helped ease some of the dissatisfaction caused by Joe's death early in the game, although not quite lessen the pain. This scene also revisits the ending of the first game and the moral ambiguity surrounding Joe's decision. Joe represents the selfish choice of prioritizing the person who gives his life meaning over the potential safety of the world, while Ellie represents the selfless choice of sacrificing herself for others and for the survival of humanity. Joe never regretted what he did, even stating that if he had the chance to go back in time, he would do it all over again. This reinforces his belief in choosing to truly live rather than merely survive, which is an arc that he took throughout the first game.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Beyond that, the scene explores the fracture in Joe's and Ellie's relationship. Ellie feels betrayed not only by Joe's action, but also by the fact that he lied to her for 4 years. In Ellie's eyes, creating the cure was her purpose in life, the reason she fought her way to Salt Lake City and never gave up.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
In a way, she also chose living over surviving. Wants to spend what little time she had with Joe chasing an objective, rather than live in a world with infected still running around, which is very fair. In many ways, it was what kept her going throughout part 1. Discovering that she could never fulfill that purpose is obviously truly devastating. More importantly, however, she felt betrayed by the one person she loved and trusted most in this world. As a result, the relationship they had built over all those years felt as though it was founded on a fragile lie. The scene ends with Joe asking Ellie for forgiveness, and Ellie replying that she can try to forgive him, though she does not know if she ever truly can. When she quietly responds with okay, it highlights both the depth of her betrayal and the love she still has for him despite everything.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.
This is further reinforced of the Joe's death, of course, when we see Ellie grieving him and pursuing revenge against Abby. So regardless of whether Ellie ever truly forgave Joe, she still loved him as a father figure. To me, this suggests that if the situation had been reversed, Ellie would have sacrificed the world to save Joe without hesitation. Why did it still fail though? Obviously, in the end, The Last of Us Part II can still be seen as a failure in many respects. The central message may be beautifully executed, and from a writing perspective, it is also a great game with a compelling story. However, at the end of the day, the developers also needed to remember that it is the game. Games are meant to be satisfying, entertaining, and enjoyable to play. If players do not enjoy playing as Abby and are giving an ending that many refuse to accept as the right one, obviously massive backlash is inevitable. Players start the game expected to have fun, and if they're forced to play as the character they hate most, watch their favorite character die without the closure they wanted, not until much later in the game anyways, and then see the game's revenge-driven narrative ends without that revenge being carried out, it is bound to leave a sour taste in their mouths. One way Naughty Dog could have significantly improved the game would have been to give players a choice at the end, kill or spare Abby. This The decision would then be left to the player, allowing them to either embrace the message the game is trying to convey or reject it. It would have been even more effective if the game had demonstrated how unsatisfying revenge ultimately is, even in the ending where Ellie kills Abby. Giving players a choice would address one of the biggest criticisms many people have with the game, while also adding another layer of nuance to the story. Such an ending would further emphasize how difficult it is to break the cycle of violence and how much willpower that choice requires. I mean, just simply release a chart of the ending of what people choose, and I'm confident that at least half, if not the majority of players, will decide to kill Abby. Players could still argue that either ending is the correct one. After all, Outtro made a choice at the end of the first game that many would consider morally wrong, and players could have been given the opportunity to make a similarly difficult decision through Ellie. It would have been a fantastic conclusion to the game, and one that addresses many of the issues that player has with its ending. In summary, The Last of Us Part 1 asks whether you'd sacrifice the world to save someone you love. Part 2 asks whether you'd sacrifice your hatred to save yourself. Whether you agree with its answers or not, that's why people are still arguing about it 8 years later, and that's why I still think both parts are extremely well written. The only difference being one part is way more satisfying than the other in many aspects, with part 2 being more controversial, hence why a lot more hate. I would still argue that part 1 is the superior of the two. However, to say that part 2 is bad or that part 1 completely clears part 2 are just extremely surface level takes that show me have no media comprehension skills. Either way, that's my take on the hate that The Last of Us Part 2 got. So, thanks for watching to the very end, and let me know what you think of it in the comment section. What did I get wrong? What did I get right? And more importantly, what did you think of The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Oh, and for those of you asking why I'm not using this mic because it's clearly the better one, I already recorded with my shitty ass headset mic and was already halfway through editing before I got this one. This one got delivered to me. So yeah, but next time this will be the better mic. There will be no puffing noise. There will be none of that, you know, bullshit high-low audio. I've tried my best to try to keep the audio as stable as possible throughout the entire recording or throughout the entire video. So yeah, hopefully it didn't annoy you guys too much, but worry not, better audios are coming. So yeah, subscribe if you do want to see future video essays with a much better mic. Thanks again.